Yay!
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
No, I'm very happy to be here.
I
Well,
was just
yeah.
threading my, here,
Yeah,
whatever
like
here
here,
means.
the web.
Here, there. But yeah, I was just threading my needle. I've got
Oh,
that
lovely.
in prep for later. So, so I'm just waving at people coming in. Hi, everyone. My mum's here as always.
Love that. Hello.
Hi everyone, evening. Waving, waving. I love your you in studio. That's very
Uh,
nice.
I say studio or craft room, but in fact, it's a spare bedroom.
Oh nice. I'm
Which,
in my
yeah.
spare bedroom right now, and afterwards I'll send you a picture of my setup. I'm
Oh,
basically
this
sat.
bit,
Yeah, that looks
this
great.
is curated very, very particularly. Everything else is a mess.
Yeah, well, this wall, this blank wall, is luckily just everything
Love
else is a
that.
mess.
Love that. If you could see the floor as well, it's just a
Yeah,
mess.
you'll love this
It is
floor.
a mess.
I'll show you after. I won't ruin my secrets for everybody
Oh
watching.
yeah.
But
That's what Instagram's for. It's just this bit. Just this bit.
yeah, that looks great. That looks
Yeah.
amazing. That's all that matters.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, hi everyone. Hi, Pretty. Thanks for joining us this evening. If you don't know me, my name is Rosanna, and I am a volunteer with the Woodfield Pavilion, which is a community centre based on Tooting Common in South London. If you haven't heard of us before, the pavilion is run by the charity the Woodfield Project, of which I'm also a trustee of that charity. And we aim to develop the pavilion as a centre for local communities and schools to share in culture, health, well-being, and to champion the sustainability and natural environment of the Tooting Commons where we are based. And I've started this Stitch Along series with video tutorials and chats with amazing textile makers. And tonight is the 5th episode, I think. And I'm very excited to be joined by the wonderful David of He's Such a Stitch. Yay!
Hi.
If anyone has any questions for David at any point, please do put them in the comments and I will try my best to relay them. But let's get started. So first off, David, welcome. Hi. And it would be
Thanks.
great if you could tell us a bit more about yourself. You're not based in London.
I'm not.
And you know, your background, education, career, everything leading up to this point.
So
Succinctly.
that's a lot. So
Yeah.
I am actually based in Whitstable in Kent, by the seaside. It's a lovely seaside town, and it's just so picturesque and really lovely. But originally, I'm from southeast London, and grew up in London. Moved away for a little bit, moved back for a little bit, and have lived kind of all over London. And my kind of background is actually I studied drama and was doing acting and was always kind of very creative, and channeled it that way. Whereas I now kind of realise I probably should have channeled it into probably being like, yeah, I want to get into theatre, but I probably should have done costume because it would have been so much more appropriate.
Hindsight and all that, yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. And then my career-wise, I've kind of worked in various jobs, a few acting jobs, and then moved into kind of more operations and customer service and events. But then 2020 happened, and I actually lost my job, but then got another job, and now work in a bakery in Whitstable, and it's great. It's really nice. It's down the road.
Wow.
There's tasty pastries.
Yeah.
It's really fun. I don't do any of the baking because that would just be a terrible idea. Absolutely awful idea. So I just do the making of coffee and talking about the pastry. And
yes.
yeah, so that's
that would
kind
be
of
that would be what I would do as well.
It's
yeah.
much.
Baking.
It's so complicated, and I really, really commend anyone that can. I can't. Just wholeheartedly cannot do it. So yeah, I stay away from that.
Yeah, Holly is saying in the comments, we all know how you bake, David.
Yeah, it's because I've managed to both burn and undercook the same pasta bake at once.
Oh, classic.
Yeah, it doesn't go well.
No. And how did you get into embroidery specifically? Are you self-taught?
I am self-taught. I always was quite crafty even when I was younger. And I remember at one point when I was younger, probably kind of early teens, I had a pair of Converses and I found some cotton and a needle, and I thought, I didn't really know that it was embroidery, but I kind of run a stitch around the edge of the Converse. But then many years later, I was watching loads of videos on Instagram of just like really satisfying stitching videos of embroidery, and decided to kind of have a go at it. But the only way I felt I could have a go at it was to buy absolutely all of the gear. So I bought like a huge pack of embroidery thread. I think I bought, it was 200 skeins of embroidery thread.
Yeah, the classic, the Amazon
thinking,
like circular things where it's like 144 for £5. You're like,
and it was that moment where you kind of go like, yeah, I need that much.
Yeah. I need every colour that's ever been made.
Yeah, and I found that, I think the first piece I ever made was, I did a RuPaul quote.
Yes.
And it was really, really probably quite awful, but it was in grey. And I think I remember I ran out of all my grey thread using it because I had no idea what I was doing. And I had all these other colours that I didn't have any intention of using. And I kind of just went from there basically and started kind of playing around with it, watching more and more videos, reading loads of blogs, reading loads of articles, and just kind of getting bits. And I kind of done that with every craft I do, to be honest. I kind of go all in and then just realise that I have no idea what I'm doing until I get frustrated, throw it away for a bit, pick it back up and go, oh, I can do that now. And then it's kind of led here. So
right. And you mentioned that you say you should have got into costuming. Are you can you make clothes as well? Are you quite talented with that?
It depends what your definition of clothes is.
I mean, if it doesn't fall apart when you wear it.
So I've made quite a lot of masks, and I keep attempting to make clothes. I think the first garment I tried to make was a t-shirt with stretched jersey, without a walking foot and without any prior knowledge, and it technically held together.
Okay.
Which wasn't terrible. I think I wore it for a photo, and then once after that, and then I think it shrunk, and the collar was terrible, and the shoulders fit was awful. Yeah. So I kind of just abandoned it. But I've got quite a few different patterns that I've even got one already cut out, ready to go, and I've just not actually sewn it together yet. But I think that's this year I'm going to focus on actually trying to make some wearable clothes. Yeah. So
no, I made my first top last year, and people talk about having the patience for embroidery. Like, a lot of people say to me, like, I can never do embroidery, I can never be that patient. But for me, dressmaking is a whole other level of patience.
Oh, it's so much technical things. It's awful. It's so hard.
Yeah, I know. And starting with something like jerseys and
and someone's just said, stretch jersey with an overlocker. That was a bit of information that is golden, and I wish I had known when I bought the stretch jersey.
Yeah, I found out what an overlocker was like last year. I was like, what is this magical thing? I mean, I don't have one, but
neither do I.
Well, I would need one of those.
I definitely think that will be something I eventually progress to after I've made something not in stretch jersey.
Yes. Start maybe with a nice cotton or
definitely. Absolutely.
So what other crafts do you do as well? I know that you do a bit of crochet.
I do a bit of crochet, which was another, I bought a book about crochet thinking like, oh, I can do that. I can give that a go, and then realised it is genuinely like learning a different language. Like absolutely like learning a different language. All the terminology changes between the US and the UK, which is really helpful. And then I do a bit of that. I kind of mainly do kind of in the round stuff, which is, and I only say this because I've never actually pronounced it out loud successfully, which is amigurumi, because I can read it and I can spell it, but I've never heard it said out loud.
Okay.
So that's, for example, like bits that have been on my Instagram before, like my little peach and my little eggplant. They're all done round. I've made myself a scarf and some crochet bits like that. And that's quite fun. And I did that again. I bought a load of yarn, bought a load of crochet hooks, and I've used probably 2 out of the full set of my crochet hooks.
But they're there if you need them, right? So
yeah, exactly. In case I ever need them. Which is what everyone does with craft supplies, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. It's like the more you have, I'm like that. I'm just like, I definitely need like all of these different shades of blue.
Yes. Absolutely. It's absolutely true.
And do you knit as well, or is it just?
No, I attempted knitting when I was younger because my sister was quite into knitting, and she used to sit on the tube and knit, and I found it hilarious. But I've just never really got on with it. I found it really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I avoid knitting and prefer crochet because, and one of the things that like, I love things that you can knit, and I think they're absolutely beautiful, but I've never really just been able to get the dexterity for it, which I think sounds strange when I then talk about embroidery where it's so precise. But I just could not get on with it, and anyone that can is clearly a genius and a wizard.
There you go, Mum. I know my mum's watching this, and she's a knitter, so she'll appreciate that.
Fantastic. I actually saw something the other day. Someone said it is like witchcraft. They've got 2 wands, and they're normally mumbling under their breath, so it's like a magic spell. Yeah.
Oh, the counting. I'm just like.
I know. You have a little bit of that.
With embroidery.
with embroidery you don't have it at all. With crochet you have it a little bit if you do simpler patterns like I do, but nowhere near like with knitting. It's so much. So much.
And it's funny that you mentioned that your sister used to do it on public transport, because in my very first stitch along I spoke to Emily Rowan, and we were talking about that, and we actually came up with, by the end we were like, yeah, we're going to normalize crafting on public transport. Like we were like, we need to start this movement, because
fantastic.
Like, it's such a great time. I mean, we're not doing it at the moment, but if I think about it, it's like, that's such a great time.
Absolutely perfect.
Be doing some crafting, but you ever see someone doing it? Yeah, I
feel like I'm that mad person though, because if I see anyone like on the train or on the tube crocheting, I feel like I'm just staring at them. Yeah. Because I have like a bit of knowledge about it. That tiny bit of knowledge makes me think, like, if I watch closely enough, I know what they're doing. I have no idea what they're doing. No. But I feel like I look like I'm mental because I'm just looking at them constantly. Yeah. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. Or like, but I did attempt to embroider once. Yeah. I tried to embroider once on a commute home, and it went quite successfully, but I did get quite a lot of funny looks. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, when I'm looking at someone, I can't, if they're knitting, I can't work out what they're doing, but I'm just like interested. I'm just like, what are they making? But then I feel like the person doing, like, but it makes perfect sense. So I think when, Pretty says it's so common in trains in Mumbai. Well, there we go. Oh, amazing. Well, crochet's on a commute. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start doing it when.
I think it's definitely needs to be the new norm. Like, it's acceptable to read and do all different things on the train, so I think you can craft on the train. That's fine.
People literally do horrifically annoying things on the train, so sitting there with your little like crochet or your knitting or whatever is fine.
Totally acceptable. Totally acceptable.
And where do you get inspiration from your pieces? Because they're very like, there's a lot of humour in them. They're quite like tongue-in-cheek. Yeah,
they're quite. I like the term saucy. Maybe.
Okay.
It's probably quite good. So quite a lot of it is. I quite enjoy like pop culture references, and I think that feeds into it a lot. My husband's also great as well at recommending things that I should do. He comes up with great ideas, and he's got much more of a kind of attuned eye to kind of really trending things that would work really well. I also, a lot of my pieces that I've shown on my Instagram, you'll notice are quite a lot of them are very heavily LGBTQ, and so there's been quite a lot that's come from that. But I also think a lot of my colours, it's just I've always been that person. I quite enjoy the bright colours and the contrasting colours. Like, I'm not really that person that understands when colours clash. Yeah. It's I'm the same even when it comes to kind of like at the house and everything, that it says that I will be that person. Like in our living room, we've got kind of like a lovely tealy wall. We've got a bright yellow chair because I love that. I think that's brilliant, and I love those bright colours. So that's why a lot of my pieces, especially the ones for the Christmas show, were bright pink, bright orange, bright green with like bright yellow thread, neon greens. Yeah. And I just think it looks quite cool and pops quite a lot.
Yeah, and let's talk about it. You were the winner of Kirstie's Handmade Christmas, the first episode.
Thank you.
Yeah, amazing. How did that come about? Tell us about it.
So I basically submitted a design for it. Which I went along the theme of Campus Christmas again. And I think it's because one of the things I think I said it on the show, one of the things I love about Christmas is all the things that aren't Christmassy but are Christmassy.
Yeah.
So, for example, watching certain films that might not be Christmas, but they're Christmas to me. So, for example, The Wizard of Oz is a massive one that I think is just a Christmas film. They don't mention Christmas at all in it. Same for The Sound of Music. Gone with the Wind, the film that no one ever finishes, stuff like that. And I like that sort of side of it. And I like that everyone does their Christmas differently. Even though we all kind of have relatively the same kind of dinner, there are presents, etc. That's kind of what most people would do. We all have our own little quirks.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of translate that into how you can kind of have this really camp Christmas, because Christmas is so camp. It is so camp. You literally take this one bit of the year where everyone goes like, I'm going to wear like ugly jumpers and I'm going to cover everything in tinsel and put lights on my house. And I'm just like, this is camp. You can't tell me this isn't camp.
Yeah.
So I submitted that. And there was a lot of kind of going back and forth between me and the production team about different elements and different things that I would make. And then I was given 2 weeks before the filming to make everything, which was, I think there's only the Christmas tree competition, I think one other, where you're allowed to make everything before.
Okay.
So everything else, they make it there on the day. And I've spoken to a few of the competitors from other episodes who did a competition where they had to make on the day and said how crazy it was. I spent those 2 weeks. I think in those 2 weeks, I must have got about a total of about 12 hours sleep.
I was going to say,
manic.
you made like, wasn't it like 30 hoops or something?
Yeah, 30 hoops I made. And that doesn't include ones that didn't necessarily go as well as I had hoped. So they didn't actually get finished. And I think they're somewhere in this room. But it was a matter of, my husband would wake me up in the morning, put a hoodie on me and be like, you need to start sewing.
Oh,
like, you have to start sewing. And I'd sew all day and get to the point where he'd go to bed and I'd keep sewing.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a mad time, and I was living off like energy drinks. And I started off watching films thinking like that would be good just having the background, but then they were too distracting. And then I ended up like listening to, one of the things I love listening to if I've got nothing to watch to really concentrate is like thunderstorms. Like on YouTube, just like thunderstorm noises. It's so good. And I was listening to that. So by the time it actually came to going to the filming, I think I was just running on pure adrenaline, and just like everything was just so sleepy. My body was tired.
Yeah.
And then afterwards I crashed and like got home, was like, yay. Straight to sleep. Straight to sleep. But it was absolutely amazing. It was so fun to do.
Great.
It really was.
Yeah, it looked like a lot of fun actually, and just how different everybody's like trees were, different practices that were there.
That was one of the weirdest things as well, is kind of the build up, the 2 weeks. I knew that there was 3 people somewhere else in the country doing exactly what I was doing, but a different craft. And one of the weirdest things I think specifically about the tree competition is we didn't meet each other or know what anyone else was doing until we got there on the day.
I was going to say,
which is really strange, because then you sit there on the day and you kind of ticking away in your head going, well, which one of us is going to win? Because it's really hard to peg 4 completely different crafts against each other. In that sense, because it doesn't mean, like, if it was for embroidery artists, then you can at least kind of go, well, there's 4 embroidery artists, we compare them to each other. But when it was completely different. We had concrete, we had resin, we had macrame. They're so different and so far apart from each other. So it's so hard to even kind of gauge which one of us was doing well almost. But all of them were so amazing, and it was so nice to meet them on the day. And we were all just spent so much time kind of like fawning over each other's trees.
Which is so nice. And I suppose when they're so different, it's like, I guess if it was all embroidery, I would feel a bit more like, oh God, like if I didn't win, I guess I may take it more personally. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. It's really strange, isn't it? Like I think all of us almost felt like the odd one out, because we were all technically odd ones out from each other. It's really weird.
And you were, out of the 4 contestants, you were the only man.
I was.
And you are the first man I've interviewed for this series, actually.
Oh, amazing.
Yes.
That's
And
cool.
I really wanted to interview a man that does textile crafts because, well, I wanted to throw it to you. Do you think there is a gender imbalance, disparity in craft? Has it affected you in any way?
I think it definitely exists. It's definitely there. I think there's a few kind of things. I think it's strange because it's always seen as, specifically, if you look at things specifically as embroidery, crochet, knitting, sewing, they are seen, and are very much seen to the outside world as very female or feminine.
Yeah.
Whereas there's nothing about it that is inherently female, because that's not a thing. It's not a necessarily feminine thing. And I think what's weird is that not only is it identified as like this female thing, but it's also identified as this like old nana thing.
Yes.
It's
well,
always
someone's
seen
put in the comments that you're an old lady at heart.
I am, but that is not just the embroidery. That's also because I just don't like going out. I just quite happily stay at home. And I think what's really nice is that through Instagram and through being on the show, I've actually started kind of connecting with loads of people, especially loads of men who do embroidery, do crochet, and it's so crazy that these people are out there, but it's still not seen as a usual thing.
Yeah.
Which I find really weird. And I've posted about it before on my Instagram. Like, I go to my sewing shop in Whitstable, which is absolutely amazing. I love them in there and they're great. We always end up having a chat. And especially during the pandemic, when they were open, I would wait outside to go in because there was too many people in the shop, and women would walk in front of me. And when I'd say kind of like, oh, excuse me, they would go, oh, sorry, I just assumed you were waiting for your wife or your mum. I'd be like, no, I'm going in. I'm going in. And it was just this weird...
And not only are you going in...
Why can't I go in there?
Yeah, and not only are you going in, it's like, I don't have a wife anyway. So
yeah, I'm like,
assuming
if
that
you know
about
where
me
my
as well.
wife is, could you let me know?
Yeah.
But
wow.
yeah, and it's one of those strange things. It's odd that it's so gendered, and I hate unnecessarily gendered things anyway.
Yeah.
But it's so gendered that it's this weird thing. And the question I always get asked, especially about sewing specifically, is I always get the, oh, are you an engineer? And I was like, no. And they're always like, oh, I thought most men I've heard of who do sewing are engineers, because it's all about the construction and fitting things together. Oh. And I'm like, oh,
I've never heard that.
Okay, like, fine, that's a thing. But yeah, I just kind of believe that it's, I've, and a lot of my friends and family admit it, I don't have guilty pleasures, because I've always been that person that if I enjoy something, I'll be like, yeah, no, I enjoy that. I'm not guilty about it.
Yeah.
So it's not even like a guilty pleasure or anything like that. I enjoy it. And I think if anyone enjoys doing something that is an old nana's craft, just do it.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. And also, like, the term of guilty pleasure anyway, it's just inherently, it's shaming, isn't it? It's like,
exactly.
You know.
And I think the shaming element is a big part of it, that even when people are so shocked that a man might have a sewing machine or sew or do embroidery or crochet, it's almost a shaming thing that you would do something that is seen as feminine. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
Because it's feminine, or because I'm knitting or crocheting? Which part of it is the bit I'm supposed to be ashamed of?
Well, it's supposed to be guilty about. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's not how anyone who does these things, most people who do these things do them because they just enjoy them.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's it.
I've never heard the thing about, being an engineer. Obviously, I'm not a man, so that's really interesting.
A really strange thing. It'd be interesting to see if there's any men out there who also sew and aren't engineers have heard that, because I heard it quite a lot.
Wow, and it's strange because I would say, out of a lot of them, like embroidery specifically, isn't anything to do. It's decorative.
And I think as well, it's also that thing. There's quite a few amazing people out there who are men who do sew. And they do embroidery, and there's amazing artists out there who do insanely beautiful detailed work that I'm just like, well, why is that not manly? Or seen as something that a male can do? It's not a gendered hobby or interest.
No.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
It's absolutely crazy.
In the comments says Economy teacher at school told me boys don't sew. That's awful.
They were
But
wrong.
I've seen some comments saying yes, representation, hashtag men
Yeah.
sew too. And it's so true.
Yeah, and I think it goes even beyond just men who sew. It's just, it should just become normal. Like, there was this point in time where everything was obviously handmade. So why can't we just also admit that at a point in time everything was handmade, and it was probably made by men and women at some point or another? Yeah. So why does it matter? It doesn't matter if what your gender identity is. Yeah. You can still use a sewing machine if you want to use a sewing machine.
Yes, exactly. So all genders sew. Someone's asking in the comments, which is one of my questions, but we'll ask it now, is what you're currently working on.
So at the moment, I'm doing a couple of commissions at the moment, but I've also launched the other day on my Instagram. I'm doing a whole project on LGBTQ plus icons. Right. So I think it's something that I was kind of playing around with for a little while, and I realised that probably quite a few of my pieces are already kind of in that category anyway. But this particular series, what I've done is I did a little ask out on Instagram and asked who thought what people they imagined were icons in the LGBTQ plus spectrum, and that kind of covers everyone right the way up to allies. It's all about just inclusivity, because to be an icon in the LGBTQ community, you don't necessarily have to identify as one of those things. Yeah. And the first piece that I did, which is actually behind me, was Dr. Frankenfurter from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is yet again another film, but also one of it's my favourite film of all time. But I think there's so many people out there that are now in the public eye and really do amazing things to push the general understanding of LGBTQ people, that I wanted to kind of acknowledge that. And I also thought it'd be a good chance for me to, one, explore my own style and try out some new things, as well as also it's kind of going to be a long running project. I'm not going to necessarily all do them in order at one point or another. They'll drop in and out of my kind of usual content, and I'm just going to try out a few different things. But if anyone has any recommendations on someone they think counts as an icon, please let me know. I think my list is already at about 60 people, but I am more than willing to keep going and add more and more people so far.
Okay, I'll send you some people I think of.
It's amazing what people's views on it are, because there were some people who sent me like really, really amazing people who are actors, singers. I got politicians, I got TV stars, TV presenters, everything. And then you also, what I kind of hadn't quite realised is that there's so much a part of that, the kind of Instagram culture now, as well, as you get the people that have love, and it's become an icon, is like memes and just general internet content. And quite a few people were recommending things to me that I have seen through just meme pages on Instagram. And I was like, oh, I suppose that has become a thing. Okay, yeah, fine, I can work with that. We'll see. But I'm hoping to start my second instalment of the project. I'm starting it hopefully next week. I'm trying a new technique, and it is someone who is a star of the hit series that has just been on TV on Netflix of Bridgerton. To give a little tease.
Oh, people put your guesses in the comments. I haven't seen it, so I'll be.
Have you not?
I haven't. Oh, okay.
So good. So good. I think it took about 2 days for us to watch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm always up for a recommendation, so.
Yeah, definitely. I really recommend it. It's so well done.
Great. And you're saying it's a long-running project, so the answer to this might well be no, but of course, tomorrow is the start of February. February is LGBT plus History Month.
It is, yes.
Does that timing filter in at all? It's just how
surprisingly, it actually didn't, but it's very coincidental. But I'm kind of hoping as well that the few pieces that I've got that I'm finishing off at the moment, I'm hoping that I can try and then maybe throughout February really kind of hammer out some of the icons to have them out there. And it really is such a wide list. Like, I'm talking, it goes right the way up to kind of mega star, right the way down to kind of like Pat Butcher. Like it's every kind of level. So
Right?
who knows who it will be? One day you might get Pat Butcher. One day you might get an absolute megastar.
I'd love to see Pat Butcher. I've been described like, because I wear big like faux fur, big earrings. I think Pat
Love
Butcher.
that. I also need to comment on the fact that your top is just beautiful and
Thank
matches
you.
my mug. It
I,
matches.
yeah. You know what? When you said about Rocky Horror Picture Show, when I was like 13, some like horrible girl said that I looked like something out of Rocky Horror Picture Show, and at the time, of course, I was like, oh. And now I'm like, great.
Yeah, it's so here for it. It's the
like,
best thing. Like, it's amazing as well. Like anyone who has ever not seen the film and then watch it is like, what is going on?
Yeah.
But also, if you ever go to see it, kind of like a sing-along version or whatever, it's amazing the sort of people that you go like, I would never have pegged them as a Rocky Horror fan, and it's like permeated so much like normal culture that these people go mad for it. It's amazing. It's honestly the best experience.
Wow, I love that. Someone's asking me where my top is from. It's from TK Maxx, I think. But it is Moschino, so, but not Moschino price.
Fancy.
You can get it in TK Maxx, but my mum bought it for me, so she'll say if I'm wrong in the comments. And how have you been finding lockdown? Has your practice changed anyway? I guess like you know that the Handmade Christmas was in November, wasn't it? So
yeah, it was. So we filmed it in October.
Okay.
And it was on beginning of December. So it was, and like, don't get me wrong, in this house, we celebrate Christmas early and we go all in. But October was very strange because it was even before Halloween. It was like beginning of October. So it was a bit of a kind of like, oh, wow, suddenly I've walked into this gazebo and it is Christmas. But lockdown has been interesting. I kind of started lockdown with a job in central London, was commuting in and out every day, and then was working from home, and then I unfortunately lost my job. And I actually found that lockdown has kind of given me more of a chance to focus on my craft and kind of go, well, actually, I love doing this. Why wasn't I spending more time doing this beforehand?
Yeah.
So that's quite nice. And it obviously brought around the opportunity of Kirstie's Handmade Christmas, which I genuinely don't know if I would have been able to do if the pandemic hadn't happened and I was at work, still commuting every day. I just don't think I could have done it. So it's kind of really obviously opened up doors for me that I didn't know existed.
Yeah.
And it's been brilliant. I know that there's lots of things that are happening, and I talk about that from a very kind of privileged point of view, that I've been able to be at home and been able to enjoy creating, and I know people aren't as fortunate. I also live very close to a lovely, lovely beach and seaside, so I have that on my doorstep, which really helps. But it's been hard at days where I've just not wanted to even go into this room, not wanted to look at a bit of fabric. But other days I've just kind of disappeared up here and spent hours stitching. So it's been fantastic.
Yeah, and I bet during the heat wave that we had over summer, being by the sea,
it was amazing. It got to the point where it was even too hot to walk down to the beach, and I found myself like sat outside doing embroidery, covered in sun cream and under an umbrella because I am far too pale for that.
Yeah, me too.
I'm not a sunbathing person.
No.
But that was really nice, and it was so nice to kind of just to enjoy those days more than I've ever really been able to.
Yeah,
which was nice.
Lovely. And do you find your practice therapeutic? Obviously, there's been a lot of talk of mental health, especially over the last year. And I mean, I've certainly noticed an increase in people picking up crafting and talking about craft for their well-being. Do you feel that way about yours? Do you see benefits for your mental health?
I definitely see, for myself, I find benefits in it. I think it's really kind of pushed me to understand that I can feel passionate about something, and actually by doing that, it can really help me. Yeah. And I also think that probably anyone who is a creator who may have a small business or sells stuff that they make, they will probably say the same, that also it can become very, very stressful just because you're doing that. And it's difficult. That there's been times when I've had to, there was a couple of pieces that I made very early on that were quite popular, and I got to the point where I would get an order through for them, and I just thought, like, I don't want to make that again. I want to make something new.
Yeah.
And moments like that. But I think it's amazing that people are starting crafting because they're at home and they've got more time.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely fantastic. I've had people message me. I've had family. My sister-in-law started embroidery, and I get FaceTime and phone calls kind of helping to help her out. And I absolutely don't pretend in any way to be the font of all knowledge, but it's just having those conversations and actually seeing that people are going, oh, how do I unwind in my own house when I've only just been in my own house all day?
Yeah.
So it's fantastic. And some of the stuff people are creating is amazing, and they didn't realise they could do it.
Yeah.
I think it's really great.
We got a question from Mark. Being in lockdown, watching yourself on TV, not being able to really share that with family and friends, was that hard for you?
Actually, not really, because when I first knew that I was going to be on the show, we were at a point in the rules where I think we were allowed people round, and we didn't know that was going to change. And my husband said, like, oh, we could have people round and watch it with people. And my stomach turned. I was like, no, we can't do that. I was like, that would be awful, especially for seeing it for the first time myself. At that moment, I think I still would have watched it on my own with my husband, no one else. It was hard because it would have been really nice to go to the pub afterwards and have a drink with people. But that wasn't a possibility. But it was the most surreal evening watching myself on TV, and then the few hours afterwards, I just had phone calls and kind of FaceTimes with all my friends and family, and it was so amazing that I didn't know what to do with it, and I felt like I didn't really do anything until about 3-4 hours later, and I just kind of sat there in absolute awe of being like, that was so lovely.
Yeah. And
so
did they know that you'd won?
I had told a couple of close friends and some family that I was going to be on the show before I announced I was on the show, but nobody knew the outcome of the show apart from my husband. Because one, he would have eventually got it out of me because I would have just ended up telling him, and two, he picked me up from filming and I had the trophy with me.
With the trophy.
So it just would not have happened. There was no way of hiding it.
That's true.
Really,
well, I guess maybe you were, sworn to secrecy that you couldn't really tell people.
Yeah, and I think we had, like, between me and my husband, I think people were guessing a fair bit. They were kind of going like, oh, I don't know. The way he's spoken about it, he's not really told us enough either way to say whether, or maybe he has, maybe he hasn't won. And then it was really weird. Obviously, like, I was sitting there watching it, and while they were kind of deliberating and about to announce the winner, I was really nervous, like I didn't know.
Yeah.
And it was like, and
you didn't see that bit, right?
Yeah, and I thought, like, genuinely, the thought went through my head, going, what about if they've changed their mind and they've just edited it differently? And I'll get an email in a bit.
With a pretend.
Yeah, like there'll be an email saying, like, can you post that back to us? Which was absolutely crazy, but yeah.
You deserved the win.
Thank you.
You deserved it. Your tree was incredible. If you
I think you can see on my face when I win that I had no idea.
Yeah, you were like,
oh, okay, really?
Yeah, if people haven't watched it, you can see it on 4AD,
yes.
So definitely catch up and watch that. So we actually are going to do a little bit. We are going to be Kirstie Allsop tonight, guys.
You can be.
Taking her place, because David is very kindly going to show us his French knot technique, his method French knot, which he showed Kirstie on the show, which is very exciting. And I mean, I often get asked about how to do French knots. I think they're quite popular because, I don't know, they look fun. You can do a lot with them. You can create really nice texture. And they're a bit different. It's not just like sewing. It's like you get sort of...
They're really good for kind of making, give a piece dimension, especially a common thing in embroidery is a lot of people do quite a lot of florals. And I think they really massively add to any floral piece as well.
Yes, that's very true. And so if you could talk firstly just about a normal French knot for anybody that and show us how you do yours.
So I have prepared in my, of course, lovely, gaudy, bright colours. a
Oh, I
bright
feel
pink.
so boring now.
That's gonna be fine. There's no
Oh, black and
judgment on
white.
your French knots. So I have done one already, and what I've done is I've done it in bright yellow thread, but you might be able to see there's a very small little dot there. So I've
Yeah.
done one. So I'm working with 3 strands of my 6-strand embroidery floss, and that is something I would also point out. I did not know that you could separate embroidery floss into strands when I first started. So I was just sewing away with 6 with a tiny, tiny eye needle. Really, really helpful.
So in the needle very easily.
Well, I basically forced it.
Wow.
So, which
I
is
use
obviously not the best way to do that.
these needle threaders.
Yes. They are gold dust. They are gold dust. So what I'm going to do first is I will show you a kind of what a traditional French knot is, because I know that they are, between that and metallic thread, they are kind of the most spoken about thing in embroidery about being kind of difficult and devil's spawn.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the best place to start. So, like I said, I've got 3 strands on my needle. And what you need to do is come up through your fabric. I'm not sure if you can see quite there, but I can always come a little bit closer. It's where my setup proves to fail me, because we won't tell everyone that I'm clearly balanced on an ironing board.
Yeah.
So
I love your setup. I love it.
It's great. It's great. So coming up through the fabric, pulling all the way through. So I think the thing that I learned quite quickly with French knots is that you watch a lot of videos, and although it looks really simple, like a lot of stitches with embroidery, it's not necessarily the best kind of instruction. Whereas one of the best things I find is that holding your thread away from your fabric and your needle pointing towards your hand away from the fabric is going to wrap that thread around your needle.
Yeah.
So it's holding twice, and then you're going to point your needle back towards your fabric.
Yeah.
Keeping the tension on the wrapped around as much as possible.
Yeah.
And then when you pull through, you're kind of trying to keep that tension as well all the way through.
Now, do you go, because I forget this, do you go into the same hole or right next to it?
I think I tested this out a few weeks ago when you first kind of spoke to me, and I've actually found that you can technically do either. The best bet is to make your knot look best is that you are through the same stitch, or at least as close to that stitch as possible. If you're too far away, it won't form the little bobble that is kind of what you actually want to see.
Yeah.
So it's best to be as close to it as possible. And it's worth noting that French knots come in all shapes and sizes, as we all do. And the size of your French knot depends on 2 things, which is, one is that the size depends on the amount of strands you use on your needle and how many times you wrap it round. So I'll show you again. I think a few people missed it because it froze up on them. So I can do it again for you. So, which I'll show you, because last time I wrapped the thread around the needle twice. So this time I'll do a few more to show it a bit bigger.
Yeah.
So again, pulling your needle through the fabric, pointing your needle away from the fabric and wrapping round. So I'm going to wrap 2, 3, 4 and go back in. And this time I'm going in right beside the stitch that I came out of.
Yeah.
And pulling through, he says, there we go. And pulling through, keeping the tension on the bit that was wrapped around, and pulling down, all the way down. And you should be able to see that one is slightly bigger now compared to the others, because it had more wraps around it. Oh, yours look lovely.
Thanks.
And it's kind of one of those things that as well, you see a lot of pieces when you're kind of looking at embroidery. You see a lot of pieces where people do whole pieces in French knots.
Oh, well, yes. I follow somebody on Instagram that's done a piece in all French knots. I'm just going to.
And I just think they have got patience. That is saying a lot, because they do take a lot of time.
Yeah.
But also the thing with French knots is that they can be really good when they're messy, and it's quite useful in different textures to make them messy. And I'll go on a little bit more in a moment to show you how I make mine especially messy.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So, oh, how many times do you wrap? So the wrapping depends. You have to wrap, I would say minimum wrap at least twice around the needle. You can just wrap the once, but it won't necessarily have the same sort of texture on the actual fabric. But you can wrap as many times as you want. But bear in mind, the more times you wrap around your needle, it can sometimes become harder to then pull the rest of the thread through it.
Yeah.
And you're more prone to knotting.
Mm.
And I know we are trying to knot, but we don't want hanging thread off the other side. So
I'm just going to share this with everyone quickly. This by
wow.
Alex L embroidery, Alex Lines. All of this here is French knots.
That's insane amount of French knots.
All of this texture is French knots. Isn't it amazing?
That's beautiful work as well.
I've watched, like, she shares her progress as she goes, and I'm like, I just, the patience.
Yeah. I use French knots quite sparingly because of exactly that. They are time consuming sometimes. You do get into a bit of a rhythm if you're doing a lot.
Yeah.
But they can be kind of a bit tricky.
Yes.
But
and I'm glad that you said about tension, because that's how I describe it to people. But the last one I did, it was weird because the person was like, I've never heard it being described, the tension being mentioned before. And I was like, oh, to me, it's like the thing. Like,
I think it's quite an important thing across the board in embroidery, especially when you look at things like satin stitch and other stitches like that. Your tension has to be quite precise, otherwise you end up warping your fabric.
Yeah.
So I think I've just become quite used to, because it's very easy to assume that everything has to be really, really tight. And don't get me wrong, I'm a massive fan of, like, my fabric on my hoop, I make like drum skin tight.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely, like, the tightest possible. I use pairs of pliers to make my hoops tighter. And I like it when sometimes you get that nice, like, drum sound as you pierce through it.
Yeah.
It's like ASMR for me. But I also found, though, with French knots is that if you don't keep that tension, that's where you can lose a bit of the definition.
Yeah.
And it can actually make your knots even more knotted and not in the French knot style that you want.
Yeah.
So it's quite tricky. What I'm going to do now is I'll show you as well on a different piece. I'm also using my handy embroidery strand.
I love that. I
noticed
that on your Instagram. I was like, oh my God, I need
one. I've got to admit, I was really lucky, and I didn't buy mine new. I got mine through Facebook Marketplace from someone kind of like a few towns over from me. And it was kind of a bit cheaper, but it was also because I didn't know if it would suit me. And instantly, the first piece I used it on was actually a piece with the technique that I'm about to show you. It's become one of my more popular pieces because it is quite crude. Is probably the best way. Is probably the nicest way I could say that. This is like an absolute dream. I find it really useful, and you can get, this is a floor standing one, but you can get ones that sit under your legs, so when you're on the sofa.
Yeah.
But what I do, so to create the tension, you can see a few there, and this is actually, weirdly enough, this is the hoop that Kirstie did the tryout on the show. So these were done by Kirstie also.
Wow.
Beautiful Designs asked what thread I use. So I have still got that big box of thread that I was saying about when I first started. I've still got quite a few of them, but I usually buy from my local sewing shop, and I buy DMC thread, which
I'm going to get one to show people.
I also store mine in lovely things like this.
They look like, and they...
Yes, I think I've got some nearby as well.
As David mentioned earlier, they have 6 individual threads woven into them, so you can pick your thickness,
which is brilliant. And there's DMC also do loads of different types of thread, because there's quite a lot. They do the thicker one that almost looks like yarn, and they also do very, very fine silk ones, which is what I think I might try out in a new project
nice.
Year. So these threads are particularly useful. This technique is particularly useful if you're trying to do something like hair or beard hair, or other hair, shall we say, is probably the best way of saying that.
Yeah.
Which I will try and show you a kind of example of when I've actually used it. So without being too revealing, because it's become a bit of a skill. I've kind of, the first time I made this piece, I did this without my embroidery stand. And that technique took me hours because it was the first time I'd kind of tried it.
Yeah.
But then once I'd kind of honed it a bit, I realized the best thing about this technique is that it's actually about not doing a French knot.
Yeah.
It is technically a French knot, but the best way to describe it is anyone who knows kind of embroidery terms of stitches, you will know maybe turkey work, which is where you make a 3D kind of almost like fur effect.
Yeah.
And I'd say it's kind of a mixture between turkey work and a French knot.
Okay.
Yeah. There isn't a special needle that I use, to be honest. The needles I use are quite simple. They're the pony ones that I've been using tonight.
Yeah.
And they're just kind of simple short darners. But you can get specific embroidery needles.
Yeah.
But they're just, they're normally better when they're a little bit longer so that you can kind of get a better grip on them and be more precise for your stitches. So for the kind of beardy texture, what I'm doing now is I've already tied a knot in my thread right at the bottom down here.
Yeah.
But what I've done now, I have actually tied the knot in it, and this is 4 strands, and I'm actually pulling them apart. But obviously still with the knot at the end. Okay. And then I bring them back together. It's just so that there's a bit of kind of space and friction between them. Oh. And this will become clear a little bit later. And then what I will do is I will thread my standard needle. I'll thread it like normal with the end of that thread. Yeah. I'm also kind of ruining this piece that had the lovely beard by Kirstie also, because I'm now doing it in a nice tealy green colour. And what I'm going to do with this one is I will show you is that on this piece, I've actually found that the best way to do this is you come up through your fabric as normal, pulling your thread through. And then for the French knot, you kind of almost forget everything that I told you earlier.
That classic move, yeah.
So we're going to still wrap around like normal, but this time I'm not so precise because we're going for different thicknesses and different sizes. I'm not so precise on how many times I wrap around. Yeah. And I'm going to come back down in the fabric, but not necessarily holding so tight on the tension. Yeah. To give myself almost like a little bit of a couple of loops on the top of it, which you can then also with your needle just kind of pick out a little bit and pull up. And we're kind of almost looking for our first one to just kind of hang away from the fabric a little bit. Do you see what I mean?
Oh, wow.
And then the more and more we do, the more we kind of play with it and get a bit messier. Yeah. So we go back up, and this is where you do need to play with your tension here, is when you're pulling the next stitch through, you don't want to pull it far enough through that it will tighten the previous stitch. If that makes sense? Yeah. And this one, again, what we do is we kind of wrap around. So, for example, I've wrapped around twice, and then I might go back through my own thread and split between the strands.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that we're getting that kind of detail and texture elsewhere as well. And we come back down nearby to the previous stitch and the first coming through the fabric. And also what's great about this is you can be quite playful with your length of loops that you leave on the outside of the fabric. Yeah. So for example, I'll show you, I'll do a couple which are a bit longer just to get them out there. And when you've got these ones, what's great about these is you can then also use these to your advantage. So say, for example, see there, I've got quite a few that are quite long. Oh, yeah. The next time I come up through the fabric, either when I'm coming up or when I go back down, I will pull those stitches to one side to almost give me another dimension to it. So it looks like those hairs are all really, really kind of intertwined, very much like my own beard. it gives you that sort of texture.
Yeah.
And it also helps with this is if you're going for a piece that you want to look quite even, and I know that sounds strange considering I'm telling you that you should try and go for a more kind of a less intricate, less precise detail, it's more about keeping check on your length. If you're looking for a uniform kind of this bit of hair is X amount long, it gives you a better kind of insight when you're able to control that tension and able to pull stitches to the left, to the right, and up and down.
Yeah.
And eventually, once you kind of worked through, you can also go back through and kind of go over bits. Like I said, it really doesn't matter about coming through. You will also find this one, just by its nature, you will probably get a few tangles at some point. But also, again, the tangles are really easy to work with because you can just put your needle back through the other side and pull it one way or the other.
Yeah.
And it kind of helps. It's kind of that, it's that moment where I feel like there'd be some old school embroidery purists who would be like, that's not a thing, you can't do that.
Oh, well. You know, when I did my first embroidery class, it was, said to me, professional embroiderers would probably argue that the back should be as beautiful as the front.
I've heard this.
I've never ascribed to that.
I have never created a piece that I could honestly say that the back looked like the front.
No, I don't think it's possible.
The other thing for me is a lot of people have said to me that, and I've seen it on a few embroidery groups, is about how you close your hoops.
Oh.
So I've heard people say that you should never glue your hoops closed or glue a backing onto them. They've said that it's traditional and you should always sew them shut. And I honestly can say I've never sewn an embroidery hoop closed.
And it's fine, it's like
fine.
If it makes you happy and it works.
I think as well, by the time, if I've done a really beautiful and detailed piece, the last thing I want to do is sew on the back.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything more kind of demoralising after that to do it.
Well, I think I'm getting there. They're sort of messier. You can't really see. They're sort of.
Oh, I like that. No, that's good.
But...
So you can see with my ones, it's starting to build up like quite a lot of movement.
Yeah.
So, for example, these bits up here, what I would then do with them is I would come up back through them, if you can see that.
Yeah.
And you can see they're really kind of longer and pulling out. And then I would be able to wrap myself almost round them.
Yeah, and then twiddle them.
And then pull them back down to create that, like I said, that length that you were going for.
Yeah.
And pull it back through.
Amazing.
And that just gives you kind of more freedom to play with that.
Great. Thank you so much for showing us.
That's all right. Oh, someone's asked about beads. So I always add my beads. It depends. For example, if I was putting beads into this texture, I would probably do that afterwards, and I'd probably do it with a lot more finer thread. I would probably maybe even just do that with cotton to secure them in, and I would secure them in between. I find as well that with beads, I actually normally don't use embroidery floss. I don't know about you, because you've used quite a lot of beading before as well, haven't you?
Yeah. No, I would probably use what you would put in a sewing machine, like a reel. Yeah, like a sewing.
A bit stronger.
Yeah.
I don't think
at the time this is going to chuck us off in.
Yes, it is.
But thank you so much, David, for joining.
No, you're so welcome.
That was great, and I love this messy French knot. It's definitely something that I need to practice as well. But
I might upload a tutorial on them both at some point in the future.
Yeah,
maybe.
Love that. And people can find you over on your Instagram.
Yes.
And your Etsy store. I will include them.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been really interesting. It's been lovely to chat with you and meet you. And
it's been great. Thank you so much for
when
having
I'm
me.
in 10, when I eventually get to school, sounds lovely. I will hit you up because it would be lovely.
Thank you so much. Yes, and then we can sit and do crafty talks in person.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Thank you, David.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Trash Bag. That's my friend, Trash Bag. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye.